The purpose of this video is on using the plot blocks within Visual Sim Architect to look at the basic results of the simulation. The two plot blocks that I'd like to discuss in this video are the text display block and the X time Y data plotter. These two blocks are used quite frequently to view the results of a simulation. Consider the following block diagram. It is composed of a transaction source, which is outputting a transaction periodically once every 1 second. That transaction then goes to the processing block, and within the transaction we're generating a service time which will later be used to delay the transaction, and that service time is a random generator or a random number between the values of 4 and 8. The transaction then goes into the delay block, and the delay block will delay for the amount of time defined in the field of the incoming transaction called service time. And then this leads to two plot blocks. The first one is a text display in which we will be able to view the transaction, and the second is an X time Y data plotter in which we're going to be viewing the latency, the amount of time between the generation time of the transaction and the time that it actually comes into the plot via the delay block. And the calculation of the delay is done by a simple mathematical expression of the current simulation time, which is t now, minus the time that it was generated. And that latency is output in the form of a data structure which is a double. Now, one thing about the latency is that, or latency plot, is that the X time Y data plotter has an input port of type double. So we need to make sure that the output port for this processing block is of the same type, which is of type double. When I run the simulation, there are two plots that come up as a result. The first plot on the left is the text display. Once again, this is outputting the raw transactions for viewing after the simulation has completed. The second plot is the latency plot, and the latency is in the form of a double. So we're looking at the time between the current simulation time of the output of the system minus the time that it was generated. Now we can further specify the plot by stating the title of the plot, which I'm going to say simulation time versus latency, and then the X label being simulation time, the Y label being latency. And here I would like to have these displayed as a series of dots and connection among those dots to look at the latency. And so we see various latencies for the transaction as the simulation runs. Once again, these are the two basic ways of viewing the results of the simulation. There are many other plot blocks within Visual Sim Architect that will allow you to look at the results in ways that are most conducive for your analysis. This concludes the video on the basic results using our plot blocks.